Vikings vent line. And now he's one of the biggest Vikings YouTube superstars on earth. His Vikings pain is now your game. This is Realistic Randy Rants with Randy and Declan on Purple Daily and Score North.
Purple Daily, what's going on? Realistic Randy Rants every Monday with my main man, Realistic Randy. Hit the subscribe button for daily Minnesota Vikings entertainment. We just want to see the Vikings win a Super Bowl before we die. The last time Randy and I spoke was to kind of talk about Kirk Cousins and preview things a little bit against the Eagles. But since we've last spoke, Randy, the Vikings have played 2 games. Kind of crazy how things can go in just a week. But they get their butts kicked in Philly. Whatever. We don't need to talk about that anymore. We did that over the last week or so. I know you did the same thing on your YouTube channel as well. Hit the subscribe on his YouTube channel, Realistic Randy Rants. But Randy, the Vikings prevailed. It wasn't the prettiest of games against the Detroit Lions. It doesn't matter. The Vikings are 2-1. A lot of things were a little chaotic, but at the end of the day, Kirk gave them the dagger win. Your thoughts on the Vikings win over the Detroit Lions?
Justin Jefferson has struggled the last 2 games. The Philly game, he just got punked by Darius Slay. Mm-hmm. And then yesterday, his body language was not great. He looked like a guy that didn't want to be there. And I'm only guessing here, but perhaps, maybe, just maybe, the Philly game put him in such a bad mood that it carried over into yesterday. Either way, he needs to get over it. But in a weird way, I'm glad that happened, because it forced Kirk Cousins to look elsewhere. A reminder, Adam Thielen and KJ Osborn are excellent players. Last year, they combined for 17 touchdowns. Yesterday, they tied for first in targets with 8 apiece. That's after combining for 17 targets through the first 2 games. The results were that while Jefferson had a bad game and was a non-factor, Thielen and Osborn, they put the passing game on their backs. And Adam Thielen, as great as he is most dangerous in the red zone. The last 2 years, he's had 20 red zone touchdowns. Yesterday's game, down 14-0. First and goal at the 1. Play action, touchdown, Adam Thielen. And then KJ Osborn, he had the dagger with 45 seconds left. With Jefferson, if he has a bad game, it's not the end of the world for this offense. Furthermore, I feel like after the Green Bay game where he put up 184, Jefferson did, and even in the Philly game where he wasn't great, but they force-fed the ball to him, I believe he had 12 targets on the day. Detroit, I guess rightfully so, they came into yesterday's game saying, okay, we need to shut this dude down. Double, triple teams, whatever we have to do. And if that is the case, you've got single coverage either with Thielen and or Osborn. Shred these defenses. Make them respect all of the receivers that you have, and then to where they say, okay, we got to balance it out here, and Justin Jefferson will get better looks. Don't let the offense rest on whatever 18 does, because you're better than that. That was a great win yesterday, and I think it's good to get that out the way early to say, oh, yeah, reminder, we still have good players beyond number 18. Shred defenses, however necessary.
Before I kind of make my point about Jefferson that I told Mackie and Judd about, just more context of how good KJ Osborn and Adam Thielen have been. Ben Gessling of the Star Tribune did a pretty unique piece on KJ Osborn basically being Cousins' go-to guy in 2-minute drills for the last 2 seasons, going back to 2021. So in the last 2 minutes of games, KJ Osborn has 20 catches on 31 targets. Jefferson has 19 catches on 32 targets. Thielen 16 catches on 22 targets. So when the game has kind of been in crunch time, it's actually been KJ Osborn who has kind of risen up and been the guy who has got a lot of those balls in clutch situations. So yeah, I'm glad the offense got spread around a little bit. Like I'm glad the wealth was there. I will take the win anyway. If you threw the damn ball to Johnny Munt, we'd be obviously singing a completely different praises on this episode. But to the Jefferson point, your Philly, when you said in Philly, like that might have been a little bit of a reality check of, all right, this stunk. Like Darius Slay locked me up. Kirk was throwing my way an awful lot. Sometimes I was being held, but also that there was chances where I just had no opportunity to catch the ball. And then his body language too against the Lions, I noticed the same thing. I said something seems off a little bit. Now, maybe this is finally teams recognizing, opponents saying, let's take away Justin Jefferson, and can the Vikings still beat us? Can the Vikings still beat us if we lock things down, we double up, we bracket them, we do something to shut down Jefferson? Does Osborn and Thielen have enough for the Vikings passing attack to still beat them? Now, so far, I guess if you're an opponent in that type of theory that I laid out, the Vikings are 1-1. So they got their butts kicked in Philly with Jefferson being taken away. They won a last-second kind of ditch effort against the Lions with Jefferson being taken away. But it worked. A win's a win. I'll take the win. But you'd like to think that with a receiver of Justin Jefferson's pedigree, when he's shut down like that for 2 consecutive games, and we'll talk about the Saints game later on in this podcast episode, but you have to think that when a guy is shut down for those 2 games, it ain't going to last long. Like he doesn't seem like a wide receiver who's going to have another, 4-catch, 45-yard effort like he did yesterday against the Lions. It's probably going to be another Justin Jefferson big breakout play, but it was kind of nice still, off your main point, to see this offense spread around the wealth a little bit.
I don't think it's going to carry over into the next game because with the Philly game, you just got beat up. We can stop the whole Jefferson, he's unguardable, because at least one guy was able to prove it in Darius Slay. And I feel like yesterday was more mental than anything else. At one point, head coach Kevin O'Connell was talking on the sidelines with Jefferson, I guess trying to get him to calm down and get back in the game. I don't think this will carry over into the Saints game because if nothing else, the film that you have on the Vikings now is that, oh crap, well, Thielen and Osborn, they're still there. So we have to account for them as well. So because of that, I feel like Jefferson will get better looks. But yeah, it's only temporary. He can only be down for so long, and I think it's 2 games max for him.
Yeah, I got to imagine, too, the London game, I know it's not like a crazy national spotlight. I mean, it's at 8:30 my time. I mean, RIP for you, dude. You got to be up at like 6 a.m. to watch that on the West Coast, so sorry about that.
Don't care. Kids are still napping. I'll make it happen.
Are you an early riser as it is?
Ish. It depends.
Yeah.
For Vikings football, I'll get up whatever the hell they're playing. Whenever time they're playing, I will get up and watch them. But my kids, they'll still be sleeping. They'll probably get up with about an hour and a half left to go as far as the game. So I'm good. It'll be nice and quiet. 6:30 a.m. I'll be fine.
Until Dad yells the TV if Kirk throws like a pick 6 in the first play, and then all hell might break loose. Yeah. That could happen. Another good takeaway, Randy, from that game was this offensive line that continued it's like quietly been just very good. And that's kind of all we've kind of been asking for. So Christian Darrisaw specifically, I saw the Pro Football Focus grades come out. He was just an absolute beast in pass blocking and run blocking. He was legitimately graded as one of the best tackles in week 3 in the NFL on Sunday. And just in general, like Garrett Bradbury hasn't been a complete disaster. Funny enough, Ed Ingram's been the one that's been a little bit, hey, you'd like to see him pick it up, but he's also still a rookie. Like, give him a longer leash before you start calling heads. The Vikings offensive line, Randy, has finally been exactly what we've all been wanting it to be, which at the very least is just league average. And it's been even at, I would say, kind of above expectations so far.
I can't believe I'm saying this, but the offensive line yesterday was fantastic. They were the best group for the team by far yesterday. And that includes Garrett Bradbury. I've been looking for every which way to say, I'm done with this dude. Get him out of here. His run blocking has always been decent, but in pass protection, he was excellent. Now, there was a healthy amount of double teams and single blocking assignments for Bradbury, the double teams mostly with Ed Ingram. But even in one-on-one situations, that touchdown to Adam Thielen, that was a one-on-one situation for Bradbury, and he held his own. Shout out to him. Ed Ingram, I think pass protection could use some work, but run blocking is really good. Ezra Cleveland has gotten better. Brian O'Neill, we know how great he is. Christian Darrisaw, listen, man, I don't know if he's going to be the next Trent Williams. That's a big ask. But I will say this. As far as the left side, you don't even have to think about it. Mm-hmm. It is amazing to where, first off, if a defensive lineman, if an edge rusher, even if they technically beat you on the play. Let's say they do a arm swim and they get past you, and all they got to do is do a quick turn to get to the quarterback. His recovery, Christian Darrisaw, is so great to the fact that his footwork, his agility, he recovers in time to push you far behind the pocket. So for Christian Darrisaw, it's like, hey, bro, how do you want it? You want me to stand you up at the line of scrimmage, or do you want me to take you out of the play altogether by pushing you beyond the pocket? And it reminds me, as far as Trent Williams, yesterday's game, Niners Broncos. I kind of took this for granted. I was watching Trent Williams every single play, and it's, man, you don't have to worry about anything. He's good. And then he got hurt.
Mm-hmm.
He got hurt in that game. They took him out, and they had two replacements. The first guy came in. I don't remember their names. The first guy came in, and the immediate pressure on the left side was so noticeable that after one drive, they took him out and put someone else in. That value of not having to worry about the blind side, left side, strong side, blind side. Remember the Titans. That value is so great. Christian Darrisaw is just forged steel. He is so great in his second year. He's only going to get better. But bigger picture, the offensive line, they were great yesterday. I don't know if that's going to last because against the Eagles, not great. Against the Packers, they struggled as well. But the Lions, they have a pretty good pass rush. That was a good showing by the offensive line yesterday.
Yeah, I mean, that pick of Christian Darrisaw might be, Rick Spielman's last good hurrah with the Vikings that, he kind of traded back to get him. I know he was basically put in the doghouse by Zimmer because he wasn't all the way healthy and basically missed or wasn't active for the first 8 games of the season. But then when he got in last year, you saw, there's definitely some promise here. And through 3 games, like, the Vikings might have those pillar positions on their offensive line. Obviously, Brian O'Neill's been pretty damn good since he debuted with the Vikings 5 years ago. But now you got the left side figured out in Christian Darrisaw. And even when Dalvin Cook went down with his apparent injury, and we'll see if he actually plays against the Saints on Sunday, we saw kind of similar things that we've always seen from this Vikings running game. If they're without Dalvin Cook, Alex Madison can still be a serviceable running back. He's not the explosive player Dalvin Cook is, but they're still able to create holes for him. Alexander Madison filled in nicely. I think the only thing that's weird to me is the line seems better, but yet Kirk still gets in those kind of like happy feet moment where he like feels the pressure incoming and Mackey's thing has always been, at least for the last few weeks, as pressures and like you're just gonna get pressured. It's inevitable in the NFL. Pass rushes now are now really, really, really good. But it just seems like Kirk will still have some of those happy feet moments where he'll either check down or just make a complete buffoon of himself trying to make a throw happen. So you'd like to see him, I think, step up and be okay with that because this might be the best offensive line Kirk has probably ever played with in Minnesota. And that's a low bar to clear, but through 3 games, it certainly looks like it is.
Yeah, they should have won by more in that game yesterday. I feel like with the offensive line playing as great as they did, that's probably in the, he's been here for what, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22 now, his 5th season with the Vikings. That's probably the best showing that he's had from his offensive line. I feel like the Vikings, they could have capitalized more, but I don't know if Kirk was just in, he wasn't as bad as he was in the Eagles game, but there were moments, I feel like the game didn't need to be as close as it was. Certainly we can talk about the defense the first 3 quarters, but I feel like we should have won by a lot more instead of the last second KJ Osborn touchdown because that offensive line was excellent. Run blocking, pass protection. I haven't seen anything like that except maybe since 2017, but Case Keenum was such a mobile quarterback that he made up for the deficiencies of the offensive line. That was a great job by them, Garrett Bradbury and everybody else.
Keeping it on Kirk for just a bit here before we go on the defensive side of the ball. So we've now seen 3 games from this Vikings offense. I guess, if you were to grade Kirk through these first 3 games, who's always, by the way, been a very slow starter. September's been kind of his weird month where he's had some just absolutely terrible games. He's been a non-factor in games. I just think about the opener against the Falcons in 2019 where he only threw for like 80 yards. And that next week against Green Bay, he was just awful. Obviously, in 2020, the Vikings got off to such a disastrous start, but then he rebounded and played very, very well. But through these 3 games in 2022 and with Kevin O'Connell, Obviously, against the Packers, I mean, that was a performance, right? Like that was as good as it's probably going to get. Jefferson has a career day. He makes big throws. He finds open players. He wasn't checking down. It was solid. Then I get the Monday night game against the Eagles where it's like classic primetime Kirk, where there's positions where the Vikings could actually still come back in this game, and he's forcing balls where he shouldn't be throwing them, and the happy feet moments. And then yesterday, probably somewhere in the middle of the first two games, right? Certainly wasn't as clean as it was in week one, but he didn't play disastrously enough where he was going to lose you the game. And in fact, he won you the game with the final drive that he played. Sure. I guess if I was grading Kirk through 3 games, I would probably give him a B-. I think that's probably where I'd fall. I don't know where you would go on that, but I think through 3 games and knowing his history as being a slow starter, I think right now it's about a B-.
I'm glad that this happened early enough to where, and Kirk is such a nerd to where I know he studies enough to say, okay, this is where I struggled at. Let's get better. Let's spread the ball around. I know where to hit my targets at. And the Eagles game, you know what? It's only right. Of course, this would happen that on Monday, the video that we did, Declan Goff, where I sat there and sung Kirk's praises and say, you guys need to lay off. He's fine. He's great. He has the infrastructure. He has the coaching staff. He has the support system and culture. You guys are too hard on him. And of course, he follows that up with one of the worst games I've ever seen. Now, what I will say in his defense is that he's good for this, I would say, once a year. You don't see many games like that from Kirk. What we saw in Philly last week, it was the equivalent of the 2020 Falcons game, 2019 Bears game at Soldier Field. Now, if we see more of that, then I'm on board to say, you know what, bro, draft a rookie quarterback and we'll figure it out from there, because that's unacceptable. But the Lions game was such a hit and miss game for him. There were too many instances where on third down, he was actively targeting the short passes, where the only way that you would get a first down is if your man breaks off a tackle or two. That was unacceptable. However, he also made the throw to KJ Osborn to basically seal the game.
Yeah.
Kirk Cousins, I'm glad this happened early. Hopefully the next stretch of games, he figures it out to say, okay, I know where I need to get better at, because the excuses are gone. The main thing that I've always said that has held him back, that has held this team back, is the head coach. Well, he's gone now. How many times has Kevin O'Connell got up on that podium and just said, oh, Kirk Cousins is great. I love this guy. I want him to be my quarterback. That is gone. We can't talk about the defense being an issue. You have some of the best collection of playmakers in the league. You got to win games. There are no excuses. I've said that this is the year that you can legit judge him as a quarterback, because the big bad wolf is gone. No longer has to worry about that. What we saw in Philly, I said, oh my God. First off, I look like a complete idiot singing his praises, but also, I mean, you can't really defend this guy. And for much of that Lions game yesterday, it was more of the same. However, he made timely throws. He did enough to get us the win. It was nasty. I felt like I needed to take a shower after that game. It was so gross. Let's see what they do the rest of the season. Maybe it's better to have this sort of hiccup earlier rather than later.
I agree, man. Yeah, it seems like if you're going to get these kinks out now, do it right now. Don't absolutely, wait until you're 8-1 and then, you get through something, hit the adversity in November where then it gets really rocky. Obviously everyone loves the Kirktober talk. He always does really well in October, November. But yeah, he's notoriously a slow starter. It's a brand new system. I would say even like the Vikings offense itself hasn't gone up to the potential it should be, right? No, we really thought it was going to be great. But on the flip side, the defense actually has been a bending but not break kind of unit so far. It's not going to be someone that stops you on every play. And in fact, they're still getting gashed in the run defense, but they've allowed no points in the fourth quarter, which is obviously a humongous win for that unit after being the worst in the league last year, allowing points under 2 minutes. Pressure rate's not great. My bone to pick with the defense, and there's some to do so far, is I need more from Danielle Hunter, Randy. Like, he's got 2 pressures through 3 games. I think Zadarius Smith has been fine, and I don't think it's that Danielle Hunter's been a liability. I just need to see more from him. And I think if those 2 dudes really start pressuring, getting after the quarterback like they have in their careers, well, then that defense is going to be really damn good.
The defense has been the ultimate bend but don't break, but the pass rush has been a problem. And that's ridiculous. Our pass rushers are Danielle Hunter and Zadarius Smith.
Yeah, man.
They should combine for 30 sacks this year. The secondary has been a mess. Cam Dantzler was in the Eagles game, I thought he was really good, but then in the Lions game, he was a disaster. Chandon Sullivan turned out to be the problem that I thought he always would be. P2 started off really bad, but he made up in the second half. And the defensive line, this has been a problem the last 2 games. They can't create pressure. And I understand that the last 2 games, you faced the 2 best offensive lines in the league. But the turnover differential is 0. Okay. 30th in total defense, yet somehow 10th in scoring defense. They're at their best in the 4th quarter. You're 2-1, and that's great. But I need to see better adjustments for the first 3 quarters. For Ed Donatel, especially in that Eagles game, just sticking to zone coverage and having the corners play 5 to 7, 8 yards off their man pre-snap. Is this Ed Donatel or Mike Zimmer running the show for the defense? What's happening here? I need to see better adjustments, but my goodness, that I don't think this is sustainable. You got to come up with something in the first 3 quarters to at least make this competitive, because as the competition gets stronger, well, guess what? The 4th quarter defense has been the bread and butter for this team. I don't think that's going to last. And assuming that doesn't, what are you going to do in the first 3 quarters so far? And yesterday, I was ready to sit there and bring out the pitchforks for Ed Donatel and say, I don't even care if we're 3 games in. Fire this dude.
Yeah.
But the 4th quarter defense has been remarkable. Just get it together for the first 3 quarters, and it doesn't have to be so hard for the final 25% of the game.
Yeah, I don't think it's that the pressure has been not an issue. It's just I need to see more from it. I need to see if those 2 dudes, and Danielle Hunter and Zadarius Smith, get after it more. It's just going to make the life a lot easier. And Ed Donatel, yeah, I think they're playing this zone scheme because it's trying to make up for the lack of really good personnel they have. But dude, it's really not working too well.
Though. It's not working. No,
Yeah.
It's not.
It's ugly, and teams are running up and down against the Vikings still, and that run defense isn't going to be fixed. So, DeAndre Swift was injured yesterday. Jamal Williams ended up having still a halfway decent day, but that is just a leaky thing. But if you are good in the red zone, right? If you're good on getting a big old 4th down stop like the Vikings did to get the offense back on the field and win the ball game, all right, I can live with some of that bend not break. But when you're 30th in points or 30th in yards, but 10th in points, I mean, there's typically going to be some type of discrepancy that brings you back down to earth hard, but there is going to have to be some adjustments. Randy, your level of, again, concern here with Lewis Cine really not be able to find the field here. Are you concerned with his play? Are you worried that Kwesi just missed a pick here? What's your kind of overall feel on Lewis Cine so far?
I'm going to try to be as nice as I can right now, because I've tried to move on from this, but now with the way it's gone to where Josh Metellus is starting over Lewis Cine, I don't know if I can hold my breath anymore. Kwesi Adolfo-Mensah screwed up that draft so bad, if nothing else, by the trades they did. The first 2 trades that they did between the Lions and the Packers, to where you did all that work for Lewis Cine. And now he is the 3rd string safety on the depth chart. Harrison Smith did not play yesterday. So that should have been literally the red carpet for Lewis Cine to play. And he didn't. Why didn't he not play? Why was he not ready to play? I don't know what to say about this, because on one hand, it's not his fault that he got put in this position, but any other team, we're talking about a first-round pick, and he's third on the depth chart, or if nothing else, third in line to play on the field. Josh Metellus is playing ahead of this guy. I'm so annoyed by this because you could have had nothing against Lewis Cine. I think he could be a good player. Maybe the coaching isn't getting him up to speed in time, or maybe he's just not a good player. You could have had Jordan Davis, even with Jamison Williams being on, I don't know if he's on the PUP list or IR, whatever it is. When he comes back, he's going to be a good player. You had options there. You chose Lewis Cine. You did all this work to get this guy. Kwesi Adolfo-Mensah screwed up that draft so bad. I don't give a damn about what PFF has to say about, well, the trade value and all this stuff. It was stupid. And maybe he'll learn from this next year as far as the second draft that he has to work with. But you did all that work for a safety that can't get on the field when one of our starting safeties can't play. That's ridiculous.
And it's
stupid.
It's a legitimate player who was damn good in Georgia. Like, he's coming from like one of the best defenses of college defenses of all time. So that part's the really frustrating part. And like Josh Metellus, hey, I'm glad Josh Metellus has worked his ass off and went from a practice squad guy to being a fringe roster dude and finding some snaps last year. But then, like, I think the thing that really irks me is, well, Ed Donatell, well, he got hurt. It really hurt up his development. How much was a quad injury in a preseason that much the difference that Josh Metellus has to start over him? And then why are we, and this is, I probably know the answer to this, but like, then why are you blatantly lying and saying, yeah, no, we expect Josh Metellus and Lewis Cine to see some time there? And if Metellus would have started and Lewis Cine got in 33% of the snaps compared to Metellus at 66% of the snaps, I would have just been like, oh, okay, they got the rookie in. Maybe there are some things they liked, and maybe there is things he has to work on. He played 0 snaps, right? 0 snaps on the defensive side. He played special teams again. That part really bugs me. And look, Ventline was a lot like this too. The Vikings are 2-1. The Vikings won a game against the Lions. I know. And there's still frustrating things that were happening. I think it's just you traded back. It was it reminded you of Rick Spielman. And unfortunately, Lewis Cine now becomes kind of like a poster child for this. And I don't really blame the kid. I kind of blame more of the coaching in the organization than I do Lewis Cine.
The scouting, you should have figured it out. From making those trade backs, you gave up your second round pick. The Vikings did in order to make this move. It was one of the dumbest trades I've ever seen in the draft by this team. But you said it because, damn it, we need this guy. And he went on Twitter. Lewis Cine, I'm paraphrasing here. He posted a picture of himself. I think he said something along the lines of, in due time. This was the time for him to play. He's a first-round draft pick. And he can't play. He's not ready to play. You trust Josh Metellus over this guy? What is happening right now? That was
brutal.
So stupid. And now, oh my God, it is blowing up in Kwesi's face. They're 2-1, and let's not bitch and moan, and it's great. But this was so dumb that did you need to make this? Cam Bynum has been struggling. In the Philly game, he was awful. And I was just saying, oh, put Lewis Cine in. But, oh, my God, we can't do that because we have Josh Metellus. Are you kidding me?
Yeah. And it's last thing on this before we move on. He's playing safety. He's playing a position that, like, I don't think, and maybe I'm just being an idiot here, I don't think picking up safety is as hard as being a starting cornerback right away. That's hard. That's hard to be a starting cornerback right away in this league. But, like, he gets to play next to Harrison Smith potentially, who I know was out yesterday with the concussion. I thought life was going to be a lot easier and that transition was going to be a lot smoother. And unfortunately, it wasn't. One last negative thing here, Randy. One last negative thing before we move on and talk a little bit of previewing against the Saints in London. Irv Smith, man. What is it just time to say, you know what? As much as the Tyler Conklins and the Johnny Munns and the non-athletic tight ends of the world that don't really compare to Irv Smith, is it time to just kind of, you know what? Irv Smith is just never really going to pan out, and we should probably just move on from his idea because he's always just been a theory in general. What's your opinion on another kind of rough go of it for Irv Smith?
I'm done with Irv Smith Jr. I am 100% done with this guy. I owe Johnny Munt and Ben Ellefson an apology because they have been way more productive and efficient compared to Irv Smith Jr. He had the touchdown against the Eagles week 2, and I get that. But for every good play that Irv makes, there's about 5 boneheaded plays to follow. The guy can't catch the football, Declan Goff. That's a problem. If you're a tight end, he's as athletic. You remember a couple of weeks ago when I talked about this and I said, you know what? When I play sports, football, basketball, I'm the guy. I'm athletic. I can run routes. I can get my separation. I can do well. Irv can't even get separation, but whatever. But I'm the guy when it comes to executing an open court layup or catching the football. There's about a 50-50 shot that I'm going to screw it up, right?
Yeah.
That's Irv Smith Jr., except he's in the pros. He is finished. You remember when we talked about this heading into the season that, and when I think about this, I just laugh. We talked about this, Declan Goff, saying as far as, well, we expected Irv to ball out and the contract that he's going to need after this year. And what are we going to do? Justin Jefferson, he's going to need his contract too. How do we balance that out? We can throw that in the trash. This man, he cannot catch the ball. And separation, he can't separate from linebackers. Linebackers, the worst defenders against any athletic tight end in the league. He can't get any sort of space between those guys. The last 2 games, we've seen that from Irv Smith Jr. And you can't catch the ball. And you know what's crazy? The Eagles game. The Eagles game where there was that, it would have been a clear touchdown for Irv. I don't know what the yardage was. It would have been at least 30 yards for an easy touchdown. But the difference is when the ball is being thrown to a wide open Jefferson or a wide open Thielen, or yesterday with 45 seconds left, a wide open pass to KJ Osborn. Mid-pass, and I see the camera moves to that player, I say, oh, okay, he's got the ball. What are we going to do from here? I said that same exact crap when it was thrown to Irv Smith. Okay, he's open. All right, what are we going to do? And he dropped it. The pass could not have been thrown more perfectly than what Kirk Cousins did, and he dropped it. He should literally never see the field again. I don't have the exact targets for this guy, but I know that when it comes to tight end depth, let me give you a rundown of who I want on our tight end depth chart, Declan Goff.
All right.
Johnny Munt, Ben Ellefson, CJ Ham, Eric Kendricks, Luigi Belaine. Goodness. Maybe, well, Garrett Bradbury, I would put him there, but he's been playing well as center. Ty Chandler, anybody. He should literally never see the field again unless he plays special teams. He has been a disaster. We don't have to worry about a contract after this year. He's as good as gone.
Yeah, you move on. 6 targets, 2 receptions for Irv Smith Jr. In yesterday's loss. So he was targeted 6 times. For context, Justin Jefferson was also targeted 6 times.
Tied for second with Justin Jefferson. That's ridiculous.
Can't happen. All right, man. We got the negative stuff out of the way. Vikings are 2-1. Getting on a plane. They're flying another bleeping continent. They get the Saints in New Orleans against New Orleans in London. Your thoughts on this game going in here, Randy? A chance for the Vikings to go up to 3-1. Saints, I don't think are. I was curious if Jameis could bounce back because he got off to a really nice start with the Saints last year, and I don't think he's as flawed as he used to be, but he's got a back fracture. The Saints are still kind of banged up. What are your expectations for the Vikings in London against the Saints?
Jameis Winston is who I always thought he was. He's a guy that's going to be a 1-to-1 touchdown to interception ratio guy. Even last year, before he got hurt, as great as he was throwing about 165 yards a game. The quarterback is not an issue. The Vikings should win this game with ease, by the way, in the sense that whether it's Jameis Winston or if they decide to make a move with Andy Dalton as the backup quarterback, their quarterback situation is so god awful that we should win this game with ease. He's Jameis Winston is who I always thought he was. Vikings should win. They should go 3-1. No question.
Yeah, so far, the early lines in this game, and things will probably shift a little bit, but Vikings open as 2.5-point favorites against the Saints in the London game. So, yeah, we'll see if that's Andy Dalton. We'll see if that's Jameis Winston. I just think, with the travel and the weird, I think, and the Saints are getting there, I think, tomorrow. The Vikings are, I believe, they're leaving a little later. So it's the whole thing's a little weird. But I think the Vikings should win. If Dalvin Cook is not able to go, in fact, he claims he's just going to go. What would if realistic Randy was running that running backs room? What do you say to Dalvin Cook, Randy?
I say take the week off. Alexander Madison, Kadeem Wangu, Ty Chandler, I think will be just fine. Jameis Winston has literally 4 touchdowns, 5 interceptions this year. Will be just fine. The run game, and by the way, through Kirk's struggles early in that Lions game yesterday, it was the run game that saved their asses, both Dalvin Cook and Alexander Madison. I would say, unless the doctors medically clear this guy, Dalvin Cook, he's going to be just fine. He's basically 100%. If he's anything less than that, I would take my chances with Madison and Wongwu and Chandler.
Yeah, I mean, may as well. Yeah, I don't think there's no need to rush him. And I know, I think Pro Football Talk said he would potentially wear another brace like he did last year. Dude, just take the week off. Like you're 2-1. It's not like we're playing for the division. If we're playing for playoffs, completely different story. And I'm like, yeah, you might want to give Dalvin Cook the run. And I'm also glad, by the way, they got him more involved up until he got hurt in the game against the Lions. Like he was getting his touches. He was being Dalvin Cook. He was finding space. He was running off good plays. He looked like he was getting healthy. Alexander Madison can hold down the fort and run for 65 yards. Ty Chandler could potentially be activated. Wongwu's really been only active on the kick returns. He's actually done a pretty good job on it. So take the week off. I'm not going to be completely just devastated if they end up benching Dalvin Cook. In fact, I would make the case they probably just should rest him going into the Saints game. Randy, anything else going into that game? Any other takeaways from week 3 watching football in the NFL before we wrap up here?
I was very impressed by the offensive line yesterday against the Lions. And if they can carry that over in London against the Saints, it doesn't matter who your running back is, to your point. Dalvin Cook, he can take the week off, and Madison and Wangu and Chandler, they'll be just fine. But this has been the one problem with this team forever now, for years. I can't even think about the last time we had a good offensive line. But what we saw yesterday, even by Garrett Bradbury. Now, to be clear, I'm not all of a sudden going to be, sign Garrett Bradbury once he's done this season, because his 4th year, he's finally good. We're talking about the first 3 years, 25% of the time he's been productive. No, you need to still find a center, but the offensive line, they were fantastic yesterday. I'm glad that I saw that. And moving forward, especially with the Saints next Sunday in London, if you can keep that same energy, it doesn't matter who the running back is. They're going to win that game.
Yep. So Vikings go to 3-1 potentially, obviously, if they beat the Saints. A couple more games left before the bye week. Randy, are you buying stock that the Miami Dolphins are actually pretty damn legit here? I mean, I know they're undefeated, but are you buying stock that they are right up there with the Chiefs and Bills?
Yes, I am.
Yeah.
If nothing else, because of their receivers. Jalen Waddle and Tyreek Hill, they are legit. And Tua Tagovailoa is someone that I just had zero faith in. But this is the year that he's finally stepped up, and he's made some fantastic throws. And the position that the Dolphins are in right now, that head coach that they have, the shift that they've done with leadership, it's been nice to see. I'm a believer in the Dolphins. I think when we did our prediction for the Vikings record, I said, you know what? There's always going to be that one crazy game that the Vikings lose, and the Dolphins, they'll probably lose to them. There's no excuse for that. No, they're a legit team now.
Yeah, they're really good.
They're really good. So, no, I think it's going to be a competitive game as long as Kirk understands that beyond Justin Jefferson, you still have players. I think the Vikings still have a chance to win that game. But if they do lose, it's nothing to raise hell about. The Dolphins are just a good team.
Yeah, I think that speed is what scares you from the Dolphins, man. Like they could absolutely fly. Like and the problem is, and we saw this against the Eagles. Like if I think if the Vikings want to play track meet football, they have some nice pieces there. I just think if you stack it up against like the Eagles and Dolphins, it's advantage them in a track meet. Like if the Vikings want to run a track meet against the Saints or the Lions or the Bears, well, yeah, I'll take the Vikings in that case. But there are a few teams, Bills, Chiefs, Dolphins, Eagles, we've seen that probably have just a little bit more speed, and that's going to be cause for concern for the Vikes. But hey, good problems to have, and obviously we're still getting there. And if the Vikings go into a bye week 3-3 or obviously 4-2, we'll take that all day. All right, my man. Realistic Randy, appreciate you coming on, man. Every Monday right here on the Purple Daily YouTube channel. Hit subscribe. We will just want to see the Vikings win a Super Bowl before we die. Also hit the subscribe button on Realistic Randy's YouTube channel. We'll be back next week to break down a game from London. All right, Randy.
Later, all right.